Good afternoon. My name is Jungkook Son, and it's my honor to be here today. Mm, the topic of my presentation is on independent financial advisor in Korea, and I divided my talk into two. First, the implication of the implication of behavioral economics to financial consumer protection policies, and then my opinion on how to make IFA land smoothly in Korea. The Financial Consumer Protection Act was enacted this March, and the act contained some regulation on financial education and IFA. OECD conducts a survey on measuring financial literacy, and in 2016, UK won 15th place in total, while France won the first place in total. It's very interesting. UK is known as the earliest pioneer of financial education in the world, and France introduced national strategy in 2015, about 20 years after the United Kingdom did. As the financial consumer protection policies is very important, are very important and are very costly. I'm sure there is something we can learn from this episode. This is the ranking, and in 2000 result on the left-hand side, and in 2020 on the right-hand side. And we know there are two ways of thinking about changing behavior. The first one is rational model, and it's very traditional. And the second is context model, and the model is based on behavioral economics, and the model shifts the focus of attention towards altering the context within which people act. Yeah, United Kingdom began national strategy on the basis of the first model, but as you can see from this slide, the latest national strategies of both United Kingdom and United States took the second model into account. On the basis of the second model, consumers require education to know the important financial issues, but consumers had better delegate selecting suitable products to IFAs, because to understand finance conception and to do financial act in conformity with it is totally different. And the numbers of financial products are too numerous for a consumer to review. And consumers are very susceptible to influence by surrounding factors. On the basis of the second model, financial education provide fundamental and intuitive knowledge, such as relationship between expected return and risk, diversification, compound interest, implication of cost, how to prevent themselves from investment fraud, and how to employ financial experts on their side, etc. And SEC and Consumer Financial Protection Bureau in the United States and Japanese FSA and Bank of Japan emphasize the same. Independent financial advisor was introduced first in the world by the United Kingdom in 1987. They divided the financial advisor into independent and tied, but there was no regulation on remuneration, so they were both commission-based. And the United Kingdom citizens didn't recognize the difference between the two kinds of advisor. And Sandler report issued in 2002 highlight the biggest problem in retail financial market in United Kingdom is the commission-driven selling. And from 2006, United Kingdom authorities began review the retail financial market called Retail Distribution Review and ban the independent financial advisor from receiving any remuneration by financial distributors. And we should notice that RDR was on the basis of the second model, as Martin Whitley, the first director of Financial Conduct Authority, pointed out. In 2006, then chairman of FSA, Colin McCarthy, explained very intuitively the importance of remuneration in financial market with very interesting cases. And in the United States, registered investment advisor is very similar to independent financial advisor in the United Kingdom, and they are under heavier duty too. And the citizens of United States do not recognize the difference in the same way as the citizens of United Kingdom do not recognize the difference. And Dodd-Frank Act ordered the SEC to solve the problem, and Department of Labor attempted to expand subject to fiduciary duty, but failed after Donald Trump was inaugurated as president of the United States. And SEC introduced a new rule called the best interest rule, and the rule came into effect at the end of June this year. And under the rule, broker-dealer should consider the interest of clients first. We should notice that this is not to enhance investor education, but to change the context within which people act. A certain column on Forbes website explained very intuitively the difference between fiduciary and suitability. The role of IFA is to recommend the suitable products to financial consumer, and the role leads to other advantages of IFA. IFA should not be considered one of the product distributor, because IFA in the United Kingdom are under heavier duty and they cannot receive any remuneration from financial firm. IFAs are on consumer side, and IFA seems the way to reduce expense for educating most of the citizens to make financial expert to select financial product by themselves. And IFA seems helpful to make a sound society, not with only pseudo financial experts, but with everyone whose roles are required. When we are ill, we go to a doctor, and when we have a legal dispute, we go to a lawyer. We do not Google for medical information or legal information to treat the illness or the legal dispute by ourselves. In the same way, when we have financial issues, we had better employ financial expert with some cost, and this is the efficient way for most of us and this society. Let's move on to the second part of my presentation. IFA was introduced in Korea twice, but no applicant until now. Meanwhile, over 6 in 10 investors select investment fund among the ones salesperson recommend. And over 70% out of the remaining 4 select funds consulting internet, media, friends, etc. That means investor who can select a fund by himself is less than 1 in 10. And those figures have stayed at similar during 10 years from 2007 to 2019. Why no applicant? I assume that they are not sure. They are not assured of profitability, and I agree with them. According to the Allianz Global Wealth Report, the Korean IFA need and raised double consumer compared to other countries owing to relatively little household financial asset. And as we saw in the United Kingdom and United States, consumers do not know the difference of IFA. And Korean IFA has no specific characteristic to show to consumers to attract them. And Someone say that Koreans are not willing to pay for invisible service such as advice, but I see things differently on this point. You are looking the survey result by Korea Financial Invest Protection Foundation, and more than 1 in 4 respondents know well or have been heard of IFA, and among them, more than 50 are willing to employ IFA, and among them, nearly 70% are willing to pay amount to IFA at existing level. And the biggest reason for not willing to employ IFA is distrust, 70%, and cost 15.8%. So I assume that there is demand for IFA in Korea. Let's estimate profitability of Korean IFA very simply. Assumption are as follows. IFA's target market is only average personal consumer market, excluding wealthy personal consumer and corporate consumer. And fee structure is a flat fee on the basis of a total asset, excluding the finance sales commission. And consider only investment funds, ELB, DLB, and rev account, excluding bank deposit and protection products. And I apologize, the typo, not ELD, but ELB, and not DLD, but DLB. And applying results of investment funds to other products because I could not find any proper statistics on other products. Average compound ratio of personal consumers in all consumers of investment fund, and average fund sales fee excluding commission as of the end of June 2020. And I assume the compound ratio of average personal consumers in all personal consumers is 20%, because I could not find any statistics about that, and I just applied the Pareto principle. The estimation is very simple, so simple that I'm sure you need a detailed explanation. As for the investment funds and rev account, annual weighted average increase in NAV or in asset during 10 years or 3 years. And I apologize again, the typo. The rev account is not average issuance, but average increase in NAV. And as for ELS ELB and DLS DLB, annual weighted average issuance during 3 years. And some of the 4 figures and times, the figures I mentioned in the previous slide equals 24.1 billion Korean won. Next, the profitability of an IFA. I assume the retired financial experts would be candidates for IFA, considering some papers. And I assume annual average income for an IFA is 48 million Korean won, according to the one paper issued by Korean Economic Research Institute. At present, a Korean IFA needs over 200 households to reach 48 million Korean won. I used the figures by Allianz Global Wealth Report, and I assume a household consists of 3.5 persons. And I consider the facts consumers are expected to entrust to an IFA only portion of their asset. So profitability of IFA market seems reasonable, while profitability of an IFA seems rather challenging to reach. Furthermore, Statistics Office and Bank of Korea and Financial Supervisory Service jointly announced that the financial asset per household is 106 million Korean won as of March 2019. If this is the case, the needed number of households doubled. Fortunately, there are some positive aspects for IFA in Korea, but I skipped this slide due to time constraints. Authorities' initiatives for IFA are absolutely necessary at present. First, promote benefit and characteristic of IFA is a long time enough because consumers cannot distinguish IFA. They even distrust IFA, and consumers are very susceptible to persuading by salespersons. Second, introduce ways to fulfill the heavier duty of IFAs. In the IFA in the United Kingdom, fulfill their heavier duty with a practical way, such as a panelist or a model portfolio, and launch a website for disclosing various information on IFAs. The disclosing system in the United States shows education, career, and even disciplinary events of IFA, and tax benefits to both IFA and consumers. And fifth, permit IFA to be representative for consumers to buy and sell products in place of consumers. Sixth, mandatory employing IFA for DC-type retirement plan. And last, allow IFA to have other job for extra income on the side. And many more and more countries, including United States, United Kingdom, are applying the insights of behavioral economics to consumer policies. Korean authorities need to consider to apply behavioral economics to financial consumer protection policies such as financial education and IFA. I hope that Korean authorities have so much aspiration for behavioral economics as American Indian did when they performed rainmaking rituals. Thank you for your time.